Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I'm your host, Carrie Mecki Lozano. Today, Gertrud Mueller Nelson is back on the podcast to lift up all the many possibilities for how families can live into the season of Advent in your homes, in your domestic churches. She gives us many ideas on how we can do this. She has this really amazing book called To Dance with God, which is filled with recipes and ideas and traditions that families can do in the home of how to live liturgically. For example, St. Nicholas Day that is coming up. She has activities that you can do, a cookie recipe that you can make together, things that will take what we do in the church and bring it into our home so that we can live into it. These ideas are for the domestic church. They are not what we do in the Atrium. The last episode that we had with Mary Heinrich spoke about what we do in the Atrium and how that can also be lived into the home. But Gertrude has such an abundance of ideas for families. And so we wanted to share that with you today. So Gertrude was born in Germany and she was raised in Minnesota. She is an artist and she's a writer. She helped build one of the first Montessori schools in the United States and also saw the beginning of catechesis of the Good Shepherd in the United States. So she is a Montessorian, and she's also has given us many books, but most especially what I just mentioned, To Dance with God. If you would like to have that book, I have a link in our show notes so that you can purchase it. I have one and I love this book. I've used it throughout all of my years as being a mother. So this episode, Gertrude and I had to use a different avenue in order to record our conversation. So the audio is a little different in this episode. So I apologize for that. But Gertrude is such a gift that it was totally worth it. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Gertrude, welcome back to the Good Shepherd in the Child podcast. I am so happy you're here with me today.
Well, it's good to be here, and it's good to know that we continue to work on these gifts that the church has given us, and that we slip over way too easily and forget that at that very basic human level, we are in touch with the cycles of nature, of light and darkness, of waiting, of planting seeds and waiting for them to grow, and all the ways in which darkness in Advent is something that we celebrate, that we embrace. I mean, people don't want to believe it, and even too many of our churchy hymns want us to get rid of darkness as fast as we can. But here is a season that says, hold it. Darkness is something we need. And it would be wonderful fun with children to say, what? What's good about the dark? Oh, I'm afraid of the dark. Are you afraid of the dark? Oh, God gave us this darkness. You don't want to go and sleep outside under the sun, do you? Would you really be rested if the sun was shining in your eyes the whole time? No, God says we all need the darkness. And so the sun travels around the globe, or we travel around the sun and have times under the sun, but we also have times when we have more darkness than we have light. And sometimes we're eating supper and it's in the dark already, but in the summer it wasn't in the dark. The darkness is here because that's the cozy place where things grow. Let's name all the things that we need darkness for. Seeds need that darkness of the earth. Roots. The trees are growing, and you say, look at the leaves are all gone and the tree looks dead. Down in the darkness. The roots are still crawling around looking for nutrients, sipping water, growing stronger. But right now, they need the darkness. What else needs darkness? Well, babies grow in the dark before they can be born. And they have to stay in that darkness for 9 whole months. That's a long time. And if a mama has a baby inside her, does she say, I'm tired of waiting? Let's go and borrow the neighbor's baby. No, she doesn't do that. She doesn't go and get somebody else's baby because she's sick of waiting and put their baby. No, what does she do to get ready for this baby who's coming? What does she do with all the little brothers and sisters who are around? She says, we got to get ready. And they get a little bed. And what else do they do to get ready for the baby? They make little things. And probably Granny is probably knitting little booties. And you're stacking up diapers. And there's a cozy blanket. And maybe they bring out some of the things you used to wear when you were little and lay them out, and still those 9 months are not over. We still have to wait. Well, why does the baby need all that darkness? Because it's growing and it's getting just big enough until it's ready. And then comes the surprise. We need darkness to grow, and we're glad when we can wait for it. And we do the same, waiting for Christmas, waiting for the birth of the Christ child. We have Advent. That's the time when we're all pregnant and waiting. We're all waiting for that baby Jesus to be born, but we got to get ready first. We got to wait for the sun to come back bit by bit by bit. And what do we do to get ready? Oh, we get our hearts ready. We think about what did we do to get ready for the coming of Christ at Christmas. Maybe we have a little crib. And every time we do something really nicely and do it well and gladly, we can put a little straw in there and make it soft. Because you don't want to put a tiny baby right against the hard boards. And so we say, baby Jesus, we're getting ready for you. And one of the ways, we don't need to get diapers for you, but we do have to make your belly soft and comfy for you. And you didn't ask for much. You didn't ask for a mattress. You didn't ask for lots of things. You asked for us to get ready. And so we're given the dark time, and we watch slowly, slowly for this darkness to just begin inch by inch to go away, and the light's coming. Long, long, long time ago, way up north, way up high, where it's really dark during winter. Man, is it dark. You get up in the dark, you go to school in the dark, you go to work in the dark, and the sun comes out, hello, hello, and then goes again. Oh my gosh, and then you have to be in school in the dark, and you come home to your house in the dark, and you have supper in the dark, and you go to bed in the... Boy, are you waiting. And the people used to say, well, can't go out in the fields because the snow's too high and it's too icy. We may as well take one of the wheels off of our farm wagon, take the wheel in the house. Oh, yes, they say, but there's a tree in the forest that doesn't look dead. The other trees look dead, no leaves. But this tree is green even in winter. And so it's a fir tree. Oh, it's like a Christmas tree. And they go and get some branches, and they put it on the wheel. And they put lights on the wheel. They put 4 candles on that wheel. And every Sunday, I light one candle in the darkness. Turn off all the lights in your house. See what it's like. See how dark dark it is. Now you light one candle. Whoa, that's nice. The next Sunday, the same, we're getting more light. Turn off all the lights in the house. See how dark it is? Two candles, it's getting lighter. That means Christmas is coming. And we are getting our hearts ready. My gosh, now it's 3 candles. How is your heart doing? Are you getting ready? Are you doing things to make the creche soft for baby Jesus? Are you doing things to be kind to one another? Are you cleaning things up? Are you making presents, secret presents for your brothers and sisters and keeping it a secret? Waiting is holy. Darkness is holy. I mean, let's say your mama is baking a cake. I say, I just can't wait. I have to have a piece of cake. Is she going to open the oven and pull out a raw cake and give you a soup spoon to eat the dough? No. She says, wait until it's done, because then it's delicious. And Christmas is delicious when we work up to it slowly. And you know what? We don't put up the Christmas tree until the end, because that's all the lights. When we light the last candle, now we're near Christmas, and then it's time to light up the whole living room with the Christmas tree lights. And you're going to go around town and you're going to see people have all the Christmas lights up already because they don't know how to wait. And they forgot that waiting is holy. And that waiting makes Christmas lots more fun when it comes. Just like a cake tastes a lot better when it's been baked through, not when it's raw. And my kids used to say, when we were in the car and people had all their lights on already, oh, they'd say, my heart's not ready yet. It's still hard heart. Oh, they're ready. I'm not ready yet, because they had a lot of things to do. They were making the Christmas presents, and they were trying to get that bed soft for baby Jesus.
I love what you're speaking about waiting and the value of waiting. We lift that up a lot, especially with the very young children in the atrium, in the level 1 atrium. That's a common theme of Advent is who waited, who else waited. Mary waited, the prophets waited, the people of Israel waited, so
That's right.
we lift that up because you're right. Like our secular world does not embrace the value of waiting, of the value of the
No,
darkness, the value
they
of the
say it's,
growth that has to
they
happen.
sell us
Yeah.
everything they can because we can have it now.
Yeah. Right. Right. Well,
And
because that's more satisfying. I totally
they
get the
tell
drive.
us, oh, instant. Well, then there's no surprises left. There's no surprise.
I love the looking at the darkness too. I haven't really contemplated that. I know in Good Shepherd we speak a lot about, the light is stronger than the darkness, like those kind of themes. But really
Yeah.
looking at the value of the darkness and paralleling it to seasons like Lent and Advent. And I've always thought about nature as being like a beautiful primary canvas of God. So there's a lot that you can learn about who God is and what God desires for us by looking at nature. And darkness is
You
part of
got it.
nature, you know?
Absolutely. In fact, we have denied waiting. We have denied darkness, even in the holiness of the natural system through which God speaks to us, as you said. We decide which part of God we want to hear and which part we don't want to hear. Aren't we amazing? And we want it to work for instant gratification, left, right, and center. We can eat strawberries at Christmas and we can eat corn on the cob for Easter, and we can, because we will just make sure we have whatever we want any old time. And there's not that wonderful feeling of, oh, it's the season for new asparagus. And then you have asparagus every which way until its season is done. But I mean, you have all these seasonal delights that tell you where we are on that wonderful round calendar that tells us where we are.
Mm.
And our church calendar matches the natural world, at least in the northern hemisphere, very well.
Yeah.
It works perfectly.
Yeah, I love the idea of Christmas falling right next to the winter solstice. You know, this whole idea of from the moment that the light was born, the light gets more and more, right? The days get brighter.
Everything in the
Isn't that
whole
just the
church
neatest
year is
idea?
like that. Can
I
you
know, I love it.
imagine? And people don't even notice. The church was smart. And all that stuff that we say, well, that was pagan. I mean, the Advent wreath is pagan. I mean, they had Advent wreaths before they knew what Christmas was, but they knew it was holy. And they said, we're not wheeling and dealing right now. If we had to make our Advent wreath out of one tire from the car, would we get anywhere during Advent? Not out there. We
I love
might
what
get
you
some.
said about using the wheel for the Advent wreath. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Maria von Trapp about the Von Trapp family singers, because
You know
she
that she
speaks
was a
about,
friend of mine?
nuh
She
really?
came to our house several times and she wrote that book after she talked to my mother and got all the notes.
Oh my goodness. This is why there's such a parallel, because she speaks in her book about living liturgically with her family. And they talk about the wheel and an Advent wreath and a beautiful
See,
way of living
my
into
mama
Advent.
wrote a
That's so
little book.
neat.
My mom wrote a little book and she loved it. And so she came to us and we got to know her and the kids.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
That's a really cool connection. I think the last time you and I talked, you talked about knowing Dorothy Day. Like you know these really knew these really cool
Hey,
people.
sweetie pie, I had so, and the older I get, the more I look back and say, whoops, that's unusual. You took it for granted, right? But really,
That sounds like
really
life. We
made
look
friends
back and
with some of Maria's children. Yes, the wheel. And so we take a symbol like wheel, and what does it teach us? We hang it up. And we said, if we hung up one of our wheels, boy, do we need our wheels these days. We people, I mean, I don't have a car right now anymore. Boy, I hung up all four wheels. My kids don't want me on the street anymore at age 88. So, so I know what that is to go to live my life so simply that I can't even go shopping when the milk runs out.
it forces
Then
you
I
to
have
slow
to,
down by using your wheel as the Advent wreath. Is that what you mean?
yes, slow
Hmm.
down. We need to slow down.
Yeah, which is
We,
very countercultural, right? Because December in our culture is one of the fastest months of the year, right? It's so busy. But
oh, and
Advent
why?
is calling us to slow down.
Because the commercial world, you can sell more by having a funny clown be Santa Claus, right? And we
We'll
got,
speak into that. So you have in your book, you talk about Santa Claus and you talk about Saint Nicholas. Have you lived into that?
oh my gosh. Well, from the very beginning, I grew up with it, right? St. Nicholas, my parents, I came from Germany. And so that was a big thing there. But the banks have taught Europe, oh no, you got to get Papa Noel, you got to get Santa Claus, you got to get blip, 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 because they found out you could be cute and funny and you could, and you could sell lots of stuff. And they've begun slowly but surely to erase the idea that God is so huge that we can't quite digest the whole of God. And so we knock down those godly virtues and that beauty, and we remember that in a man named Nicholas, who has an amazing life story and what he did for people in the night, in the darkness. He needed the darkness so that they wouldn't see him. Because he didn't want people to say, oh, Nicholas, thank you. No. He wanted them to wonder where this came from and say, thank you, God. And so he learned to sneak around at night, and he found out where there was trouble and where there were, oh, those stories are such good stories to tell kids, the legends about St. Nicholas. And he was rich because he inherited a lot from his parents. We don't know many rich saints, but he knew how to be rich. And in the night, he would throw 3 golden balls into the window of a household where the father had become so poor he was going to sell his daughters, 3 daughters. And Nicholas says, you don't do that. So he gave them each a golden ball that made them wealthy again, enough to live properly, and he didn't have to sell his children, for heaven's sakes. And he did those kind of things. And when kids say, well, is he real? Yes. Well, I never see him. Oh, he doesn't want it. He travels in the dark. And not only that, he wants for us to help him. And he can't get to every house and all of his angels to every house and bring some cookies, some nuts, maybe a book on his feast day. And so he asks us all to be Nicholases with him. And that's kind of exactly what God wants of us too. We are the hands of God. We are the one. God says, your turn. Nicholas says, your turn. And I'm so real, Nicholas, that he puts into every heart that's willing and open to get good ideas about how to surprise people. You can sweep the garage, or you might vacuum the inside of the car, or you might empty the wastebaskets and not tell anybody. And the people in the household will say, I don't know, Nicholas I think I feel them in the air. Things are happening that I don't know what that could be. And you brush your teeth without somebody coming to say, come on now, brush your teeth. Let's wash behind your ears. You did it all without being told. That's being a Nicholas. That's being a Nicholas. And how do you celebrate it? You leave your shoes outside your bedroom door. Or maybe you dance around the table with your dessert plate and put it down. Give us just a little, we're waiting and waiting and waiting for Christmas. Do you have any little tastes of Christmas in our waiting? Just like one Christmas cookie and some little things. Would that be all right, Nicholas? I remember when not just my own kids, but myself and my little brothers and my older sisters, milkman came back in those days. The milkman came, his name was Jules, and he said to my brother, hey, Frankie, what's Santa Claus going to bring you? He said, oh, Jules, that's not Santa Claus. It's St. Nicholas, and I don't know what he will bring because he's full of secrets. And Jules, he just fell in love with our family because he was learning by this, and he'd always hang around a little while after he delivered the milk bottles because there was something else to hear. And it wasn't a bother for the children. And it wasn't a bother for my kids to be different from, I remember Peter saying, my son, saying, Roger down the street, he's got his tree up. They've got a Christmas tree. The Christ child didn't bring it. They put it up. Their hearts are ready. I'm not ready. Right. You see, instead of judging them, it was a way of saying, we got a lot to do yet. We got, there's more straw to earn. And yes, other people, they want us to hurry. But you wouldn't want to have a birthday and then find out 3 months before your birthday, oh, here's your present. No, you can have it now. And then when your birthday came, oh no, don't you remember back in July? We gave you that was your birthday present. See, no surprises. Surprises come with waiting and getting ready.
Is there any other Advent tradition that you would like to lift up for us?
Well, it's wonderful to make an Advent house. Now they've turned Advent houses into giving you all Christmas tastes, chocolates and so on. But imagine you would take a piece of cardboard, all of you, and you would make with a X-Acto knife, you would make little windows in it to open. And then behind it, you would make a piece of paper. And you would have 4 windows. And we always had a Christmas door with an upper part, 2-part, a Dutch door, right? A little one at the top and the big one for Christmas, okay? Behind it, you would make a piece of paper and the kids would look at what's the gospel story for the first Sunday of Advent. Okay, let's draw a picture of that. What's the gospel story on the second Sunday of Advent? Or maybe a picture of Mary who's pregnant. Or maybe the prophets who came before us and said, it's coming, right? But you would make those kind of windows. And then on Christmas Eve, you open the top one and there's the ox and the ass. They know something. The very animals knew. And then on Christmas Day, baby Jesus drawn in the straw. And you take that piece of paper, and I learned this from a Swiss woman, do it in crayon and so on. And then she took vegetable oil and with cotton, she oiled the whole page and pasted it against the cardboard with the windows. But that allowed you to put it against a window, and the oil made the windows shine and see through.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And transparent. You should try it at home first before you see how that works. Like I suppose if you used markers or something, it might smear.
Yeah.
I don't know. But imagine doing that. The kids having something like that to bring home then, bit by bit. Or that you would have one big one on the window. The other one is to have a bare branch where you put all the things that we're getting ready for this moment, the prophets, and you make little pictures of them all. And all the people who came before. And finally, you make a little picture of Mary and Joseph. And each of these you cut out and you hang on the tree. The kids could all make one, each one make one of them.
So like a Jesse tree? Is that what it's like?
A Jesse tree. To help us wait. A lot of, what was happening so that this moment would come? What was happening? And was it all done? Is it all done then? Does it ever happen again? No, it happens in our hearts over and over. We are so literal that we want everything on the outside and to be pinchable. We've forgotten the holiness of imagination and myth, which is also true. But we've gotten rid of it because you can't sell anything if you can't pinch it. We've left our souls outside the door and we tried to live with only our body and our ego. And we forgot that we are composites of body, soul. We adults need to remember, we need to go back there. We cannot teach children without being whole ourselves. Body, soul. There's a wonderful priest who was a great liturgist, and he loved Montessori, by the way, and his name was Romano Guardini.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very famous liturgist, and he loved what Montessori did in teaching children and getting them ready for Eucharist and so on. And I was reading they're doing some kind of movie about women who have helped the liturgical movement. And so they were all here taking pictures of me and the lights. And they were hauling out stories. And afterwards, they gave me a book. And I said, well, Romano Guardini is the one who taught my parents, who taught me. And so I started reading his essays. I've read many of his books, but one of the ones that really hit me was coming of the modern, or the leaving of the modern age with the Industrial Revolution. We began to separate our souls and our bodies. And we went into the machines. There's the wheels again. They took over. We didn't take them off. We didn't keep ourselves whole. And look at us now, all the children running around with these damn telephones, right? It separates us.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't looked. We haven't even seen yet what it's doing to children who are born with one of these in their hands. What it takes away. Again, it's instant something or other, instant gratifications. And where does imagination go? Where does the inner life go?
I think that takes you back to that darkness that we were talking about. That they've never, a whole generation hasn't experienced just being bored, being in darkness, you know. So I think our faith, it does such a beautiful job of pulling back the physical and the spiritual, right? So we experience this physical thing like bread, and this spiritual thing, this body of Christ, or the
It's all
water, you know, it's just,
and using this earth and the earthly things.
yes,
Bread
yes.
and wine and oil
Mm-hmm.
and water
And
and fire
fire. Yeah.
and ashes and
Mm-hmm.
yes, branches from trees and flowers and beets that we dig out of the ground and whatever, you know, and the special foods that come with a certain season. And there's that taste. Well, here my kids are all midlifers. And in their own houses, they go right on. And if only I could tell Romano Guardini that his influence was so strong
Mm-hmm.
with Catholic university students in Germany before the war. And my parents were part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And they all learned from him. They didn't always see him, but he gave talks. I went to a talk of his in Munich in 1953. And there were so many people in the church, young people, so many people in the church. We used to say a cat could have walked over our heads because we were that crowded together
Oh, wow.
to hear him speak.
Romano Guardini was one of the top theological influencers of CGS as well. Like he influenced
Yes,
Sophia Cavalletti in our work as well.
yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Same era.
right.
And it was a huge warning about the mechanical age coming. It was going to separate us if we didn't pay attention to being body soul composites. I just love it. I didn't know that you knew about Guardini.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a book called A Year with Sophia Cavalletti, and he's one of the chapters in it because
Oh
he
my
was such
God,
a
that really
theological
makes me
influencer.
happy. I'm so glad that you
Yeah.
know that because he was huge. And of course, Maria von Trump would have been influenced too by him
Hmm. Yeah,
because
that
of
makes
that
sense.
era and Europe, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Germany even made a postage stamp of him.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yes. Can you imagine? I mean, that profound. And the youth group that just happened because of who he was. And he was terribly introverted, by the way, and a profound speaker. which often happens to introverts like myself. Um,
Well, Gertrude, before we finish, if you could tell parents who are preparing for Advent, if you could tell them or remind them just one thing, what would you want to say to them?
well, it's waiting and it's taking back the darkness. I mean, maybe have, that Advent wreath lit during supper time so that bit by bit, the whole family leans forward, waiting for the light to come back and sees what we need to do in the darkness, what we need to do secretly for each other, for one another, adults as well as children. This isn't something we do to kids. No, this is something we
Mhm.
are. This is something we are. And getting ready. It just makes Christmas a whole lot more fun. It
Mhm.
just does. Because the surprise comes. We didn't see a Christmas tree until Christmas Eve. And we had that poor dry Advent wreath on the dining room table, and we're sitting around the table, and we've got all 4 candles lit, and we're waiting behind the curtain. The Christ child is finishing up whatever needs to be done, and we're waiting for a bell to ring. Usually my father had to go bathroom at that point, and just excuse me a minute. And while he was gone, by Jove, the bell would ring and we'd say, Papa, Papa, while you were gone, the bell rang. No, really? So we would then sing our first Christmas song. Then, and in procession, we would go in and we would leave the 4 lights behind. And there was the whole tree with candles in our case. Candles lit. You go from the 4 to all of them, still in the dark, right? But illuminated. And there was the creche. And over on the side were the shepherds, and there was an angel giving them the news. And then my father and my mother read those prayers from midnight mass to us, and we sang more Christmas songs. And then we each had a little pile someplace, your spot. And not everything was wrapped in papers. And it was not under the tree because there was a whole scene of the shepherds and the angels. And the kings weren't there yet. They didn't come until Epiphany. But there might be a doll sitting next to a book. And my parents would say, this corner's for you, Gertrude.
Hmm.
And then we took turns. And inevitably, one person would say, Oh, I want you to open this here. It's your chance. Okay. And we'd all sit around and watch. And we didn't open everything at once. Some of them even said, Do not open until the Feast of the Holy Innocents.
Hmm.
And so Christmas was every day. There were surprises, and the 3 kings knew very well that there were all kinds of sales. Now they're just giving you stuff away. There was stuff that still could be gotten without falling for that whole zoo and jungle that was wrought by the commercial world. And there were lots of things we made. I remember one of my son making puppets for his sister out of
Hmm.
gourds. And we always had quiet night. We had what we called Mama and Papa nights for the kids. Each child got one night with their father and mother, and the others 2 went to bed. Okay. And they got to go in the garage and work on a project that they were working on and help each other. And they always made a list of the things they needed to do on Mama and Papa night. Those were the sweetest lists you've ever seen. Well, now I'm jabbering on. One thing that I would say is teaching darkness and waiting. And in the waiting, we get ready. We do the things that we get ready. We knit the little things, so to speak, for what's coming. And why do we do that? One of the Jungian analysts used to say the people who knit know who they're knitting for because they can hardly take a stitch without thinking of that person. And it's true. When you're making something, you're thinking of that person the whole time. And in essence, you're knitting them into being.
Mm.
And we have to
I love
knit
that.
the coming of Christ into being. You don't just go to the store and say on sale, oh, well, what's Amazon got for us, right? That's not knitting somebody into being. And that's why we
Mm.
make things for each other. We become godlike, if you will, as creators, because we were made in God's image and likeness.
Mm. That's really beautiful.
It's a wonderful time, but it is, as you very well say, Carrie, it's we're swimming against the stream.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
commercial world, there are people who say, well, this Christmas is not going to be commercial, but we don't even know what that not going to be commercial means. This is much more positive. It's about cutting yourself off from that world for a while and being that body-soul composite and taking in nature and knowing that nature has it. And I remember for St. Nicholas Day, my son was in fifth grade and he'd never say, oh, really? I mean, really, who comes in the night? He never said it. He knew the importance of the mythic.
Mhm.
Okay? Kids know that. So we thought, my husband and I thought, well, we make that special cookie, that speculatius cookie. Maybe we should invite him to help us make the cookies tonight while the other two are in bed sleeping. And so that he can quite literally become part of what St. Nicholas brings in. Oh, he said, I would be honored.
Mm.
And he came down in his pajamas. And because it became a thing with my kids, he put his hands in the flour and put it on his cheeks because when I had flour on my cheek and the kids said, oh, Mama, you got flour on your cheek. And I said, it's a sign of a good baker. From there on in, they always put flour on their faces and then it's not a necessary tradition. But you know that the whole time he was silent. He did not speak because he was doing something so holy. It was Eucharistic, I swear.
Mm.
And he made for each of his sisters, one of them was an ice skater, he made an ice skate. And then for the others, he made a dog with all the fur on it. He made all the fur through um, a garlic press. And we fixed these cookies so that when they were baked, they could be, distributed. So the next morning, so we sang our song for St. Nicholas. We came downstairs and the dining room smelled of this wonderful cookie, and hanging from the chandelier were these cookies. You knew which one belonged to whom. And then Peter took me aside and he whispered, I thought he'd say, oh, there's my daughter. He said, it's really necessary for St. Nicholas to put it together because humans couldn't make it this beautiful.
Mm.
I mean, he wanted that mythic aspect to remain. I thought for sure he was going to say, oh, there's the cookie I made. Oh, I see it. No, he didn't.
Well, he saw the deeper message that he was part of, like you said before, Saint Nicholas is the embodiment of, the characteristics, some of the characteristics of Christ, right? So your
Yes,
son was noticing that too, that he was a
yes,
part of that embodiment of
yes.
bringing God to the world.
And you should see the cookies he makes Tuesday, and he's 60 years old, right? And the kids have moved out, but they get boxes from St. Nicholas. It has that much power, Carrie.
Yeah, 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 I can see that. I can
And
see
it's
that.
from the sacred imagination. We forget. We say, well, it's only your imagination. No, 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 no. We denigrate a whole part of ourselves, and that's soul work. And that's why children need to throw those phones away, and those parents need to throw their phones away and put those kids out in the mud to play and put them in with a pile of dough to make cookies and put them
Mm-hmm.
in where they can make and do and be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if the pastor too could be part of this, the waiting.
Mm-hmm.
We had one pastor who had the kids making, those kindergarten chains that everybody makes to put on the tree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They made one for every day. All the kids made one, and at the offertory, they brought it up and linked it on the strip of paper, and the chain got longer and longer and longer. And then it was around the tree that was in the church. Yeah.
This has been so great, Gertrude. This is so great. And I love your book so much. I have enjoyed through all my years of mothering referring to your book and how to live into each of the liturgical seasons well. So thank you
I'm
so much for giving us the gift of this
so
book.
glad. I'm so glad because I'm so convinced about a way of being in the church here. We have that cycle, which is rooted in nature.
Thank you. Thank you so
Well,
much,
thank you,
Gertrude.
Carrie, for asking me. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to sit and talk with you and sit at your feet.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast. So in our show notes, I have many links to help you out with many different things. I have a link for if you want to submit a podcast listener question. So if you have a question about the catechesis of the Good Shepherd, I would love to ask your question to one of our guests on the podcast. And we have an abundance of parent pages, PDFs that you can print off to give to parents of the children in your atrium, or if you are a parent, to print off for your own use in your home, in your domestic church. And we also have a lot of songs that we use in the atrium that you can use in the atrium or you can use in your home. So there's a link so you can listen to all of those songs there. And then we also have a link specifically for our CGS Advent resources. So CGSUSA wants to gift you with an abundance of resources to help your family during the season of Advent. You do not have to do them all. You pick what works best for your family for this time in your lives. And so we have a link in our show notes for you to access Advent songs, some handouts about the readings for the different Sundays during Advent, and an Advent wreath prayer. I also have links for other things you might need for Advent, such as an Advent wreath, Advent candles. We have an expectant Mary statue that is really great for your prayer table during Advent. And we also have the little gospel booklets, which are a beautiful way for you to read the scripture, just exactly the same translation and words that we use in the atrium, in your home. And they also make really great gifts, these little gospel booklets. And of course, there's a link to Gertrude's book, To Dance with God. I also am going to go ahead and put links to the last 2 episodes that we had Gertrude on. A couple years ago, she came on to talk about how a family can live into Lent and how a family can live into Easter. So just save those for in a couple months whenever we're preparing for those liturgical seasons. You can listen to Gertrude and all her beautiful advice that comes from her book on how we can live into those seasons liturgically in our home as well. Also, if you are a church, a parish, a school, a regional group, a diocese, you can become an organizational member of CGSUSA. In organizational members, they have access to unique things that only organizational members get access to, like such as items that you can put in your bulletin that have to do with what's going on in the atrium, and information about assistant formation, and much, much more. So you can find information about organizational membership and how to become an organizational member in our show notes. And also, don't forget that we have the religious potential of the child, which is one of our main texts in the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. We have it now available on Audible. Go check out Audible and look for the religious potential of the child. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. We would like to thank all of our contributing members because you are making this podcast possible. If you would like to know more about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or if you would like to become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.